The Third Level by Jack Finney. The Third Level Introduction. The Third Level by Jack Finney is about the harsh realities of war. War has reversible consequences, thus leaving people in a state of insecurity. It is also about modern day problems and how common man tends to escape reality by various means. In this story, a man named Charlie had his mates and reaches the third level of the Grand Central Station, which only has two levels. We will look forward the summary at the last. The third level, the lesson and explanation. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two, but I say there are three, because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station, and he said it was a walking dream wish fulfillment. He said I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it, and thus I just wanted to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they do not wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. The important words in this paragraph: stack, a pile of objects, or typically one that is neatly arranged; timetables, a schedule showing the departure and arrivals times of the train, buses, or any aircraft; walking dream, an involuntary dream occurring while a person is awake; wander, just to walk or roam. The story begins with the mention of third level at the Grand Central Station. The protagonist himself is aware that even the presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railways would express great confidence in the existence of only two levels. But he himself has been to the third level. Considering the entire scenario, Charlie, the protagonist, had a word with his psychiatrist friend. He explained that Charlie was experiencing a waking dream wish fulfillment, or in other words, hallucination. According to the psychiatrist, Charlie was unhappy. Upon explaining further, it became clear that it is the burden of all the modern problems that is pushing him to experience the apparent possession of something not present. He tends to escape the reality. Charlie agreed with what his psychiatrist friend had to say, but he still found it a bit odd to have been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. But that's the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collection, or for example, that was a temporary refugee from reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather didn't need any refugee from reality. Things were all pretty nice and peaceful in his days. From all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too. Blocks of four of partially every US issues, first day covers and so on. President Roosevelt also collected stamps too. You know, refugee, the state of being safe or sheltered from pursuit, danger or difficulty. Charlie begins to believe in the possibility that he has been experiencing all this to escape the harsh realities of the modern world. His friends agreed to it as well. Even his stamp collection is a sort of asylum he resorts to in order to feel protected. On the other hand, he starts thinking otherwise. His grandfather started his stamp collection, but in those days they had not seen the consequences of war, and there was peace, harmony, and security. His grandfather must have not been insecure. The collection, moreover, was amazing, with blocks of four of particularly every US issue. Even President Roosevelt also collected stamps. Anyway, here is what happened at the Grand Central. One night last summer, I woke late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from the Grand Central because it's faster than bus. Explanation. He starts explaining that what exactly happened and begins with how he chose to take the subway to his apartment instead of the usual bus after a late night shift. He did this in order to save time. Now I do not know why this should have happened to me. I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Louisa, my wife. Gabardine. What is gabardine? A smooth, durable, woolen, worsted, or cotton cloth. Explanation of that paragraph. He describes himself as an ordinary man of 31 dressed in a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy bat. It was so ordinary that he could see other similar men at the station. He explains how he was in his normal state of mind, not wanting to escape from anywhere. All he wanted was to be with his wife Louisa at that hour. He still doesn't understand why this happened with him. I turned into the Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of the Grand Central hundreds of times, but I am always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time, I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. There is probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park, and maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way to escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. He wondered that the Grand Central was expanding, so this is the explanation of that paragraph. He wondered the Grand Central was expanding at a very fast rate, just like a tree, and with its root. He it is not a big deal that they even have a secret tunnel under the city of the Times Square, or maybe the Central Park. He feels it might be because Grand Central is a place of exit of innumerable people. He also managed to escape reality because of the same reason, although he never shared it with this psychiatrist. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downwards. I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sounds of my own footsteps, and I didn't pass a soul. Then I heard that the sort of a hollow roar ahead, that means open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and come out on the third level at Grand Central Station. For just a moment, I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer tickets, windows, and trains, gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking, and the man in the booth wore a green eye shield and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim, and a sort of flickering. Then I saw why. They were open flame gas lights. Explanation. The unusual corridor he had entered into began angling left and it was slanting downwards, which he felt odd about, but nevertheless he kept on walking. There was no one except him, and the voice of his feet echoed. He finally heard the sound of people talking from a distance. Then he took a left and walked down the stairs again, only to reach the third level of the Grand Central. He thought he had somehow made his way back to the second level, but as he noticed, the room was smaller. There were fewer tickets, windows, and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. The man in the booth was also different, and the stations was dim light, for there were open flame gas lights. There were brass spittoons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black four-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy mustaches in my life. A woman walked in through the train gates. She wore a dress with the leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high buttoned shoes. Back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very career and eaves locomotive with a funnel shaped stack, and then I knew spittoons means a metal or an earthenware pot, typically having a funnel shaped top used for spitting into. Okay, so vest, what is a vest? A garment worn on the upper part of the body. Charlie could see brass spittoons everywhere when suddenly a glimpse of light caught his eyes and he saw a man pulling his gold watch from the vest. He was dressed in an old fashioned style. Suddenly he noticed that everyone was dressed like in the 19th or 18th century. It was basically the time before Dudley Watts. So many beards and fancy mustaches all around, something that protagonist had never seen before. He even saw a very small career and eaves locomotive, which made him sure about the what time he is in. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was The World, and The World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. I found that the front page since in the public library files and it was printed June 11, 1894. To validate his suspension, explanation, to validate his suspension, he went over to the newspaper boy who was selling The World, a newspaper which was discontinued years ago. There were some headlines about then the President Cleveland. The date on the front page was also June 11, 1894. He was now sure. I turned towards the ticket windows, knowing that here, uh, here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go. In the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been there? It's wonderful town, still with big old frames, house, huge lawns, and tremendous trees, whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out on the lawns, the men smoking cigars, and talking quietly, the woman waving palm leaves fans with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still sent 20 years ago of and World War II over 40 years in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. Immediately he went to the ticket window to get the tickets of Galesburg Indians for him and his wife. So this is the explanation, okay? It was a wonderful town with a lot of greenery. He was well aware that from here on one could buy tickets that would take them anywhere in the United States. He described how things were in 1984 before the two World War took place. Evenings were twice as long as they are now, men and women living in peace and serenity. The clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hat band, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets on way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. That money, mister, he said, and if you are trying to skin me, you won't get you very far. And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was also old style bills, half again, a big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There is nothing nice about the jail even in 1894. As the clerk calculated the fare, he looked at Charlie's fancy hatchback. Charlie just had enough for one-sided journey. Just as he took out of money, the clerk informed that this is not the acceptable legal tender, and by any chance, if he tried to be smart, he won't be able to get away with it. He glanced at his cash drawer and realized that the currency used back then was different in almost double the size. He ran out because he didn't want to go to the jail. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day during lunch, however, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old style currencies. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 bought less than 200 in old style bills, but I didn't care. Eggs are 13 cents a dozen in 1894. The day ended after we came out. The next day he went. This is the explanation. The next day he went to withdraw his entire savings and got them converted into old money. By paying some amount of premium, it cost his much and even worried his psychiatrist friend, but he still went with it. Back then, egg cost 13 cents a dozen. But I have never found again the corridor that leads to the third level at the Grand Central Station. Although I have tried often enough, Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this and didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while, I stopped. I went back to my stamps, but now we are both looking every weekend because now we have proof that the third level is still there. My friend Sam Werner disappeared. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspense because Sam is a city boy and I used to tell him about the Galesburg. I went to school there and he always said he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is all right in 1894, but unfortunately he could never find the way to the third level corridor again. Despite hard efforts, his wife Louisa was pretty worried about when she got to know about it all. After a while, he went back to finding distractions with the help of stamps. Somehow, Sam the psychiatrist disappeared out of the blue. Charlie suspected that he had gone to Galesburg. He found himself in the time of space of 1894. Because one night, fusing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of sale. And the postmark proves the date. Envelope is called a first day cover. Then they are never opened. You just put blank paper in the envelope. Fusing means show unnecessary or excessive concern about something. One night, Charlie came across a first day cover. It is an envelope that stamp collectors mail to themselves on the first day of its sale to mark the date. They are just blank inside and are not meant to open. The night among my oldest first day cover, I found one of that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to me, my grandfather, at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said, and it had been there since July 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I didn't remember it at all. The stamp was a 6-cent dull brown with a picture of President Grace Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Grandad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened it. The paper inside wasn't blank. It read the address, Willard Street, Galesburg, Illinois, July 18, 1894. Charlie. I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. I have been there 2 weeks, and right now down the street at Dahlia's, someone is playing a piano, and they are all out on the front porch singing, seeing Niley home. And I am invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. This was the letter that was sent to the grandfather.
This is the letter. This is the page in your textbook. You can read it. The note is signed Sam. At the stamp and coin store, I found out the Sam bought $800 worth of old style currencies that ought to see him up in a nice little hay. Fed and grey business, he always said. That's what he really wished he could do, and he certainly cannot go back to his old business. But in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894, his old business, why, Sam was my psychiatrist. The letter had been signed off as Sam. Charlie found out from the coin stores that he used to visit. Sam had bought old currencies worth $800, which was to be utilized in a hayfield and grain business, which what he always wished to do. He couldn't go back to his old business, certainly not to Galesburg, Illinois. The story ends at a mysterious note where Charlie is wondering the Sam is psychiatrist.
Summary. The story revolves around a 31-year-old man named Charlie who experienced something weird. One day after work, coming from the subway, he reached the third level of the Grand Central Station. He reminisces the entire experience with his psychiatrist friend, Sam. Charlie thought he experienced time travel and had reached somewhere in the 1890s, a time before the world saw two of its most deadliest wars. As soon as he realized what time he is in, he immediately decided to buy two tickets to Galesburg, Illinois, one for himself and the other for his wife. Unfortunately, the currency used in that century was different. Thus, the next day, he withdrew all his savings and got them converted, even if it meant bearing losses. He went looking for the third level, but he failed to find it. It worried his wife and the psychiatrist, Sam, who told him that he is hallucinating in order to take refuge from the reality and miseries of the modern world, which is full of worry. Charlie thus resorts to his stamp collection in order to distract himself when he suddenly one day he finds a letter from his friend Sam, who had gone missing recently. Sam wrote that he always wanted to believe in the idea of the third level, and now that he is there himself, he encourages Charlie and Louisa to never stop looking for it. Thank you. Hope you all understand. Thank you. Hope you all understood the chapter. Comment your doubts. Thank you.